Hello again, and welcome back to Year 5 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is Week 12, Day 1. We're continuing through the book of Genesis. This is Genesis chapter 47, the latter verses of the chapter, and then into chapter 48. We're actually skipping a little bit of chapter 47. So last time we saw Jacob and all his household go down to Egypt and meet with Pharaoh and receive permission to settle in the land of Goshen in Egypt with their flocks and their herds. We saw notably that none of the household of Israel took positions of authority in Egypt except Joseph only, or that they continued to live as shepherds, save only that they then served as caretakers for the flocks of Pharaoh. Last of all, we saw Jacob meet with Pharaoh and give him his blessing. What we're skipping is the description of how, in the course of the years of the famine, Joseph, in his administration of the grain reserves that had been stored up by the Pharaoh through his good stewardship, basically took possession of the entire land of Egypt for Pharaoh, so that all of the people of Egypt really were much more subjugated to Pharaoh. So it's not really relevant as such, but it is what happens at the beginning. Or I don't see irrelevance, so I'm not reading it. I shouldn't say it is irrelevant. It's not directly related to the narrative that I see happening here, but what's going on is perhaps... Anyway, so this time we will begin to see the conclusion of Jacob's life story. So this is verse 27 of chapter 47. Thus Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they gained possessions in it, and were fruitful, and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the days of Jacob, the years of his life, were 147 years. And when the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph, and said to him, If now I have found favor on your sight, put your hand under my thigh, and promise to deal loyally and truly with me. Do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. Carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place. He answered, I will do as you have said. And he said, Jacob said, Swear to me. And he swore to him. Then Israel bowed himself upon the head of his bed. After this, Joseph was told, Behold, your father is ill. So he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And it was told to Jacob, Your son Joseph has come to you. Then Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful, and multiply you, and I will make of you a company of peoples, and I will give this land to your descendants after you for an everlasting possession. And now, your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. And the offspring born to you after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. For when I came from Padan, Rachel, to my sorrow, died in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, Who are these? Joseph said to his father, They are my sons, whom God has given me here. And Jacob said, Bring them to me, I pray you, that I may bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face, and lo, God has let me see your children also. Then Joseph removed them from his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. And Israel stretched out his right hand, and laid it upon the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand upon the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph, and said, The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has led me all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and in them let my name be perpetuated, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he took his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand upon his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendant shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, By you Israel will pronounce blessing, saying, God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you, and will bring you again to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you rather than to your brothers one mountain slope which I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. Okay, so there are a few things going on here, and I don't have an expertise in this, but this is what I've heard, and this is what I think we can see. So, first of all, the emphasis on the sons of Joseph reflects the importance of the tribes descended from Joseph in the early days after the Exodus. So fast forwarding 400 years to the time when Israel left Egypt. What we see is Ephraim, the tribe of Ephraim, is the largest of the tribes, if I'm not misremembering, and certainly they are prominent, and they have this leadership role. And as they enter into the promised land, if I'm not misremembering again, Joshua, who leads Israel after Moses, Joshua is of the tribe of Ephraim, and Ephraim takes possession of the land around Bethel, where God had first appeared to Joseph. So all of these things, that talking about the vision at Bethel, at Luz, and so forth, this is kind of drawing this connection, that this is Ephraim's inheritance, and that Ephraim was in the leadership role among the tribes before the time of the kings. So that's interesting and relevant, because very often modern textual critics, for various reasons, especially connected with when we actually see the Torah, the 5 books of Moses written down, they will argue that, in fact, Genesis is, and all the rest of the Torah, are a very late development, something that's only written down, maybe 400, BC, something like that. But at that time, and I'm stealing this from Father Stephen DeYoung, I heard this from him, but at that time, the tribe of Ephraim was gone. It was non-existent. It had been lost. It makes no sense for this to have been included in a scriptural text that is assembled after the return of the tribe of Judah from exile under the Persians. So that we see this emphasis on the tribe of Ephraim. This is one of those textual markers that indicates the antiquity of this book, how it was passed down, whether it was verbal, whether it was written, but this wouldn't have been relevant. It wouldn't have been told if it was just invented at the time of Ezra. So that's one point. This passage is an indicator, a proof, if you will, of the antiquity of the book of Genesis. The other thing that's worth noting, and this is a different point, is again, if, in a certain sense, if we read this, there's this prophecy that Ephraim will become a multitude of nations. Well, that never happens to the historical tribe of Ephraim. They gain prominence. They rule for a time the northern kingdom of Israel, the 10 tribes. And then the Assyrians come and take them away into exile, and they are gone. However, we see somewhat in St. Paul, and again, I'm stealing from Father Stephen DeYoung on this, or borrowing. St. Paul, when he talks about how all Israel will be saved, he's developing this idea that the only way in which lost Israel being the tribes of Ephraim, and Israel says, your sons, Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh, will be my sons. So in a certain sense, they are Israel. Jacob chooses them as his heirs. All Israel will be saved, says St. Paul in Romans. And the only way they can be saved is if the Gentiles, among whom the 10 tribes, and especially the tribe of Ephraim, was lost, with all the Israelites, including the Ephraimites, basically ceasing to function as descendants of Abraham and not using Jewish names or Hebrew names any longer, becoming pagans, becoming Gentiles, becoming Greeks and Syrians and whatever else. But when they become Christians, then they are restored, then they are brought back. So we who are not descendants of Abraham in any genetic way that can be discerned, all of us who come into the church, we are the fulfillment of this promise. We don't replace the children of Abraham. We don't replace the Hebrews. They still are called and invited and urged and loved by God to come into the commonwealth of the church. But when the Gentiles come into the church, then indeed multitudes of nations have come out of Ephraim, and even what was evil in the exile and rebellion of the tribe of Ephraim long later in history is turned to good, to the salvation of all the nations, which is the purpose of Israel in the first place. So there's something kind of beautiful there. There are other elements in this passage that are going to be somewhat obscure, but that's what I wanted to emphasize here. So God bless you all. We'll see you shortly for day 2.